I, M24, live a very different life than the majority of my family. I didn't graduate high school, but got a GED and started working as a welder and hunting guide. The rest of my family is pretty successful. For instance, my father is a lawyer, and my mom used to be an RN, brothers own companies, sister got married to a lawyer, etc. I'm glad my family found a lot of success, but they can be very shallow and often put me down for what I do for work. My mom will make comments like, "When are you going to school to get a real job?" or stuff like that. They didn't want to pay for welding school, so I worked at an auto shop to pay my own way through. They often go on vacations and cruises without me because I won't be able to appreciate the culture or food and other beasts like that. I love them, but I have been slowly pulling away from them over the last few years since I can tell that we live different lives and they have no interest in sharing their lives with me. Now, my grandfather's brother Mike and I have always been pretty close. Mike and I used to go hunting when I was pretty young, and even though Mike was also working in law, he and I shared a love of the outdoors and nature. About a year ago, Mike was diagnosed with cancer and has quickly gone downhill in the last few months. I have taken a lot of time off of work to care for him since he is my oldest relative and no one else wants to take care of a frail, sick old man for some callous reason. His wife died 15 years ago and he doesn't have any children. He recently asked me if taking care of him was hurting me financially, and I told him that I was cutting back on hours at work, but I loved him more than any of my other family members, so it was my pleasure to take care of him. The next time I went to visit him, he revealed to me that he was having his will changed and would be willing his hunting cabin. It's not a cabin, it's a small single-family home with power and running water on 70-plus acres, to me, along with about $100,000 to get it fixed up and start your life. He wants the rest of his estate to be liquefied and donated to different causes that he was passionate about. Mike is actively dying now. He asked to be taken out of hospice so he can die at home with his dog, who will also be coming with me when he passes away. In his own home, my family was talking about how much money Mike has, and how when he dies, they want to convert his hunting cabin into a summer vacation home, and how they were going to fund a big memorial trip to Europe on his dime, since we are his last remaining family, and they expect the majority of his wealth to be broken up between us all. They do not know that everything is being donated, and I am getting the house and some of his money. I know that when they find out about what Mike has so graciously done for me, they will rip me down and curse his name. I don't want to be around for the fallout. I plan to set aside some money for renovating the house for full-time use and start a small welding company someday. So, Whipta, if I cut them out of my life as soon as Mike is gone. Seeing this new greedy side of them has soured me a lot, and I don't know if I can even stand being around them anymore, even though I know that Mike always said that your family should be everything to you. TLR. My great uncle is willing a large plot of land and a lot of money to me. Greedy family wants to use it for a trip to Europe. Relevant comments. Comment. NTA. Using what he left you and building up your life is the best way to honor your uncle. People can be vultures when someone dies, and it's always satisfying when they face an empty field. Besides, since they're also super successful and cultured, they shouldn't mind if the family poor gets a leg up. Thanks. I want to honor Mike as best I can, and family was very important to him, so I was worried I might be spitting on one of his core values by cutting the rest of my family out of my life. OP on why his family think welding isn't a noble profession. Apparently, welding doesn't look good on the family, and that I'm throwing away my potential to pursue an easy way out because I'm lazy and don't care about our long family history of being lawyers, judges, and doctors. OP on making sure Mike's will is actually legal and the family cannot contest it. Hope. I uploaded this 4 hours ago, and within the last 4 hours, when I went to my parents' house to eat dinner, the primary topic of conversation was all about Mike's assets. They are debating who will get the house he lives in, who will get his life insurance, etc. They are picking destinations in Italy and Greece they want to visit with the money, and I quote, "I hope he doesn't hang on too far into the summer because that's the best time to visit." They did not even offer a small plate of soup or anything for me to bring back for him because he's not eating. He is, in small amounts, but he doesn't feel well and doesn't have much of an appetite. I am beyond enraged right now, and this is a vent. Hopefully my resolve to get of them will last after I have cooled down. OP on how Mike is doing and if he doesn't have that long left to live. OOP's relationship with Mike. He is on a lot of meds at the moment, and mostly we just sit and watch reruns of old Tom Hanks movies. He seems to be pretty peaceful, and sometimes we talk about good hunting or fishing trips we've been on, and stories from his youth. The dog is a golden retriever named Maisie, and she is a good old girl who will be turning 8 this year. I am in pain. I don't want any money or cabin. I just wish that Mike and I could have taken one more trip. Honestly, at this very moment, I am angry at my family and grieving over Mike's impending passing. Thank you, and everyone else, for your kind comments and helping me see clarity through the haze. My parents were very busy, and I am the baby of the family by about 9 years. When my 3 older siblings left home, it was really just me, and because Mike was already on his way into retirement, I mostly lived/hung out with him. I told him about my first crush and did landscaping for him to save up for my first car. I told him about what I was afraid of, and he taught me how to hunt, how to fish, and basically everything that made me who I am today. When they moved him into hospice, I was breaking down, but it seems like all my family cares about is his money and the trust fund. Venting here has helped me in many ways. I appreciate all of you guys. Mike's properties and how they are going to be split. Mike has 3 different homes, and they are very large and beautiful, except for the cabin, which is small and beautiful. He has a lot of assets that are being liquefied and donated. The $100K and cabin will be all that gets passed along from his wealth. Update 1. I figured I might as well make an update to my original post, so here it is. Mike passed away shortly after my last post. He died peacefully in his sleep. His last waking hours were spent with me, Maisie, and the nurse that was caring for him. He is buried next to his late wife. He lived a good life. Some of his last words to me were, "We had a pretty good run, didn't we?" The will issue was hilarious to me and was a great pain reliever. Mike is always looking after me, even after his death, because watching the bombs fall in real time was like chicken soup to my grieving soul. Yes, Mike did leave the cabin and money to me. He also left me his guns, his dog and her stuff, and his fishing poles, tackle, and a few mementos from over the years. He changed the will 3 years ago and simply never told me or anyone else in the family. He left various trinkets for other members of our family that were pretty on the nose. For instance, he left my father, who spent a long time complaining about the contractors doing work on the house, a bag of old hand tools. My sister got a box of wine glasses. One of my brothers got a drawer full of pens and pencils for your blossoming legal career. He also gave all of us some money for a round of beer in his honor. Watching everyone go from fake sadness to excitement to horror and disgust was quite the trip. My mom kicked the pot of flowers outside the office so hard she tipped it over. My father just stared out the window in silence for a really long time. Oldest brother held it together until we made it home and then started screaming and swearing about getting a fucking box of pencils as a thank you for being part of his life. I have been moved from the disappointment son list to the shit list. As some of you noted, they weren't exactly angry about the cabin and the money Mike left me, but more so his larger assets that were being liquidated and donated. That drove them completely insane. The main target of their abuse was the primary organization that Mike willed the rest of his estate to, and other than an initial small explosion and some snide comments, they seemed to take it in stride. I haven't spoken to them much ever since Mike's passing and the will issue. There are still issues and such that need to be worked out, and I was told that could last up to a year. The cabin has been locked up. I set up some cameras and a gate alarm. I am moving in slowly, hopping between here and my apartment until my lease is up. It's definitely dated, and I'm currently working through renovations and repairs. Because my phone number is tied to my work, I didn't want to change it, just opted to block everyone except my mother, in case something really bad happened. After a few days of her complaining/questioning why Mike left me something so nice, she quieted down. Last week, she began calling and texting me again and telling me it was an emergency. I spoke on the phone with her, and lo and behold, it was not an emergency. They want me to donate the cabin and land to my sister, since she's thinking about starting a family and wants to raise her future children holistically. I told my mom that my sister and her husband have a double income and a lovely house in a completely different state than me, and if they wanted to move out to the country, they were completely able to do so, but I would not be giving them my land. She then suggested they buy it from me for $200,000, which is far, far less than it is worth. I said no. I got everything from "I'm a selfish bastard" to "if I don't support my sister's dreams of raising her kids in the countryside, I'm dead to her," to "Mike would want me to give the cabin and land over, to see if we ever do anything for you ever again, you entitled asshole." I feel like it should have been harder to hear those things, but it just feels like they're trying to get me to give up what my great uncle willed to me, and it made me angry rather than sad. My sister also got on the phone to cry and say it was her and her husband's dream to raise their kids specifically on Mike's land. I kind of felt bad saying no to her then, but in hindsight, she's never mentioned it before, so maybe this is a new development. Since then, they've been contacting me by email, social media, and the like, hounding me to let my sister have/buy the cabin and land. So, despite my best efforts, the people of Reddit are right once again. I should have gone completely no contact. I've deleted my socials, and since I've moved job locations, they don't know where I am currently working. They do, however, know where my house is. Sometime while I was at work, my mom and sister drove over and knocked on the doors, tried to open the side door, and looked in the windows. On my doorbell camera, my mother very clearly tells my sister not to touch anything so he can't sue. I am thinking of putting up a locking gate, Right now it latches, but does not lock. Everyone is now blocked, and I am putting together a list of people that would need to be notified of a phone number change since I want to change my number. Not really sure how to go about keeping them from walking onto my property. About 2 weeks ago, when I came back to my apartment, my parents were both waiting for me to confront me about how devastated my sister is that her future children won't have the experience of growing up in the country. I'm kind of afraid that they might camp out at the property until I give in. I put up no trespassing signs, and I hope that's enough. I know one of my brothers drove by a while back because he snapped me a picture of the road my house is on. Relevant comments. OP on getting a cease and desist letter for harassment against his mother and sister for entering the property and helping the rest of the family. I don't think I can do anything legally, but I'll ask. I was allowed to move in, but on paper, I don't own this property yet. Apparently, it can take years for the will to be worked through, so I'm not sure what I can do about it legally. I don't even think I could sell the property to them, even if I wanted to. I think they want me to help provide for her and give her future kids the dream life. She has never been to this land before. When she and my mom showed up, it was the first time she'd been there. Lawyer brother hasn't spoken to me yet. The brother that drove by works in insurance. On Mike's dog, Maisie. She's a golden retriever, a little older but still active and playful. She's really well trained, so I'm hoping it won't be hard to find someone willing to work with her that's closer to my home. I'll follow previous advice and ask around at the vets. OP on his relationship with his family. I'm adopted. Update 2. Things have gotten even crazier since my last update. If I thought my family was unhinged before, they've now entered a whole new level of entitlement. After going full no contact and changing my number, I thought I could finally breathe a little easier. The peace was short-lived. A few days after locking down the property, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, but picked it up, thinking it might be something work-related. Instead, it was my dad, somehow getting a hold of me through a new burner phone. He launched into a guilt trip about family obligations and how Mike would be ashamed of me for turning my back on blood. This time, I didn't just let him rant. I calmly told him that I'd made my decision, Mike made his, and that he should be more worried about his own actions than mine. Before he could respond, I hung up and blocked the number. I immediately regretted picking up, but I didn't realize that would only be the beginning. Fast forward to last weekend. I had just finished putting up a solid steel gate with a keypad at the entrance to the property, thinking it would keep them out. I was inside working on some overdue repairs when I heard Maisie barking like crazy. I rushed outside to find my brother, Mr. Insurance, on the other side of the gate, red-faced and demanding I let him in. He started yelling about how they were all just trying to talk some sense into me and how they wanted to make me a fair offer for the property. I could see my sister and mother in the car behind him, my sister looking like she was on the verge of tears. This whole scene was making my blood boil, but I kept it together. I told him that if he didn't leave, I'd call the police. When he didn't budge, I actually did it. It's amazing how fast someone can go from being a self-righteous prick to a sniveling coward at the sight of blue lights. The police showed up and I explained the situation, how I had no trespassing signs and how they had been harassing me. My brother tried to play the "but we're family" card, but the cops weren't having any of it. They told him and the rest of them to leave and not come back unless they wanted to be charged with trespassing. Now, here's where it gets even more outrageous. The very next day, I got served with a lawsuit from my own sister, claiming she had a right to the property because it had been promised to her verbally by Mike at some family gathering I was apparently not invited to. Of course, this is total bullshit, and she has no case, but it's just another way for them to try to wear me down. My lawyer assured me this was a desperate move and wouldn't hold up in court, but it's still more stress that I don't need. Maisie and I have been spending more time at the cabin, slowly turning it into a real home. The renovations are coming along, and honestly, it's starting to feel like a refuge from all this madness. I've started setting up my workshop out back, prepping for the small welding business I plan to launch. I feel like it's the only thing keeping me sane at this point. Every time I think they can't go any lower, they surprise me. My sister's husband, who by the way has never had a kind word for me, showed up at my work. He cornered me in the parking lot and tried to get me to settle things like adults, which I quickly realized meant give up the cabin and money. When I laughed in his face, he got physical, grabbing my arm and trying to drag me back to his car. I pushed him off and told him if he ever laid a hand on me again, he'd be talking to my lawyer next. He left in a huff, swearing up a storm, and I haven't seen him since. At this point, I'm expecting them to pull more stunts, but I'm ready for whatever comes next. My only regret is that Mike isn't here to see just how right he was about them. He always told me to be careful around those vultures, and I'm starting to think he knew more about their true colors than he ever let on. For now, I'm focusing on building my life out here, away from their toxicity. The open land, the peace and quiet, it's everything I never knew I needed. Maybe someday they'll stop harassing me, but I'm not holding my breath. In the meantime, I'm keeping my head down and taking it one day at a time. The craziest part? I still feel like this isn't the end. They're gonna keep coming at me, trying to break me down, but they're in for a rude awakening. I'm done playing nice, and I'm done letting them think they can walk all over me just because I'm not successful by their twisted standards. As for how this all ends, who knows? But I'm ready for whatever comes next. If they want to fight, they've got one. And I'm not backing down. Update 3. Alright, I didn't think things could get any more chaotic, but here we are. If you're reading this, brace yourself, because my family has officially lost their collective minds. After my last update, I figured things would calm down a bit. I had the gates locked, Maisie was getting used to our new routine, and the renovations were progressing nicely. I even started setting up a small forge in the back for some custom metalwork. It felt like I was finally getting a grip on things. But nope, my family decided to up the ante. It all started when I got a call from my lawyer. Apparently, my sister's lawsuit was dismissed faster than you can say frivolous. The judge basically laughed it out of court, which was a small victory, but it didn't come without consequences. I guess getting publicly embarrassed didn't sit well with my sister, because 2 days later, I came home to find the gate to the property had been vandalized. Someone had spray-painted "Traitor" in big red letters across the gate. Maisie was barking her head off, clearly distressed, and I spent the next few hours cleaning up the mess. I filed a police report, but I already knew nothing would come of it. My family might be a lot of things, but they aren't dumb enough to leave evidence behind. The cops told me they'd keep an eye out, but I could tell they weren't expecting much to happen. And for a while, it didn't. Things were quiet. Too quiet. Then, about a week later, I woke up to the sound of engines. Multiple engines. I jumped out of bed, threw on some clothes, and ran outside to find a convoy of trucks and SUVs parked along the road just outside my gate. My family had apparently decided to stage some kind of intervention. They were all there. My parents, both brothers, my sister and her husband, and a few of their friends, who I recognized as old family friends and business associates. They were all standing there, arms crossed, looking like they were about to launch into some kind of culty, staged intervention. My dad was the first to speak, and he made it clear this wasn't a friendly visit. "Son, this has gone far enough," he said in that tone he always used when he thought he could bully me into submission. "We're here to settle this, once and for all. You need to stop this foolishness and do the right thing by your family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like they had all collectively decided to ignore reality and live in some kind of shared delusion. I told them that they were trespassing and that if they didn't leave, I'd call the police. That's when things got really wild. My oldest brother, Mr. Law Degree, stepped forward and claimed that he'd found a loophole in Mike's will that would allow them to contest it and get everything divided equally among the family. He was grinning like he just won the lottery, and the rest of them were nodding along like this was the greatest idea ever. I didn't even know what to say. I asked him if he was seriously trying to steal the property that Mike had specifically willed to me, and he had the nerve to say, "We're just trying to correct a mistake." Mike was clearly not in his right mind when he made those changes. That was it. I lost it. I told them they were all vultures and that Mike would be rolling in his grave if he knew what they were trying to do. I told them that I wasn't going to be bullied, manipulated, or scared into giving up what Mike had left me. And then, because I was done with the whole ridiculous spectacle, I turned around, walked back into the house, and slammed the door behind me. But of course, they didn't leave. They just stood out there, shouting and making a scene. I could hear my sister wailing about how I was ruining her dream of raising her kids on the property, and my dad was going on about how I was throwing away my family for a few acres of dirt. I called the police again, but by the time they showed up, my family had dispersed, leaving nothing but the smell of burned rubber from their tires as they sped off. The cops took my statement and told me they'd keep an eye out, but it was clear this wasn't over. And it wasn't. That night, I got another call from a different unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. On the other end was my uncle, the one family member who I thought might have had some sense left in him. He's always been more of a neutral party, staying out of family drama and keeping to himself. So when he called, I thought maybe he was going to offer some support or at least some advice. Nope. He called to tell me that the family had hired a new lawyer, and they were planning to take me to court to contest the will, using some obscure legal strategy that was supposed to guarantee them a win. He tried to convince me that it would be easier for everyone if I just agreed to settle and give them what they wanted. I hung up on him. It's been a few days since that call, and I've been on edge ever since. My lawyer is working overtime to prepare for whatever nonsense they're going to throw at me next, and I've been staying at the cabin full time, keeping a close eye on things. Maisie has been sticking to me like glue, sensing that something's up. I wish I could say I'm surprised by all of this, but at this point, nothing my family does shocks me anymore. They've made it clear that they care more about money and status than they do about me or Mike's wishes. So, where does that leave me? Honestly, I don't know. I'm prepared to fight them in court if I have to, but the idea of spending months, maybe even years, tangled up in legal battles with my own family makes me sick. I've been talking to my lawyer about all the options on the table, and one of them is to countersue for harassment if they keep pushing this. But right now, I'm just taking it one day at a time. I've got the cabin, I've got Maisie, and I've got the memory of a man who treated me like a son when no one else in the family would. And that's enough to keep me going for now. Who knows how this will end? Maybe they'll finally back off, or maybe this will turn into an all-out war. All I know is that I'm done playing their games. If they want to keep coming after me, they better be ready for a fight, because I'm not backing down. Mike didn't raise me to be a pushover, and I'm not about to start now.